Good evening, good day, good night, wherever you may be on this planet right now as you tune into this episode of Lean Into Love Now. I'm your host, David Baines, and welcome back if you've come here before, and if this is your first time, welcome. Just want to say, as I said, this is my third episode doing this, and part of my the work that I do, I also have a website, and every episode I sort of write the episodes beforehand, and then I do them in this video format. So I actually have some notes down here that you may see me looking at times, just because I like to get into some intricate details sometimes and to memorize everything. I'm an older guy, as you can see. I got my gray hairs. That sometimes spending that time is a little bit more challenging for me. And so, anyways, I just wanted to say thank you again for taking the time. So let's get into it. Today's story is really the story of free will, and do we have free will, and does this higher power actually care about what we do? And, sort of part of that is just, looking at the religious narrative or stories that we have followed as human beings, or our religious, religious imaginations of how we imagine how we got here on the planet. Because really, when you look at it throughout history, humans have spent a lot of time, thinking about these things and creating stories around this to make sense of our world on this cosmic earth that's spinning through the universe all the time. And so really how we got here is so important, because really it shaped our civilizations. It shaped our communities, these stories that we're using. And so they're very, very influential and very important. Now, historically, leaders and individuals have looked to holy books, or they've had some vision, or they've had a religious authority that they went to really make sense of the world. And this made sense, as part of our evolution. We just didn't have the time to be thinking about these things. And, when something went wrong, we would look to an external sort of reason, like, why did this happen? Why did my crop go bad? And so we did come up with stories to explain all this. And so, certain individuals within a community, would actually come up and they'd spend a lot of time on these particular stories, and a lot of them became the religious authorities within their community, and generally would be the leaders, and they would talk about topics around morality, social order, purpose, our origins, how the origin story and whatnot. And so this gave people comfort and allowed humans to actually go about their day-to-day business, not having to worry and think about these things, because they had people, and those people generally became the community leaders, or they would be the advisors to the community leader in terms of guiding these principles, as I said before, that were really shaping the day-to-day community actions. Now, a common thread in all these sort of stories, again, I grew up in a Western world, in what we call the Western world, a major religion being Christianity. But obviously, when you go out throughout the world, there's big religions, there's small religions, all kinds of stories about our existence, mythologies, and what have you. But the common thread in all of these, again, depending on what community you were in, was that this higher power had an agenda, had a story, or had a clear idea of what our behavior should be, our human behavior should be. And of course, when we look around, you yourself would go to, if you're a religious person, you would go to the religious authority, and they'd sort of be very clear on what that behavior would be, or you'd have a holy book that you go to that would have a very clear agenda, that God created us with these agendas. And I'd like to present today that God had no agenda. He had no story, didn't actually care what we did. And again, I'm using the word God. And now some of you that are listening, I don't believe in God. I don't think God is whatever. Still think this was going to be interesting, because it's as you hear the whole thing, it's going to make sense at the end what I'm talking about. And you don't have to be religious to understand this. But I'm going to use the paradigm of God, because a lot of people are influenced by God on this planet, and as I said, it's shaping a lot of our decisions. And I feel that if we could let go of that sort of the story that God has an agenda, I think it actually be very positive for humanity as a whole as we evolve into the future. So if you can, explore this idea with me, imagine that God, was the creator of the first car. He's the master engineer, very intelligent, one would say, if you believe in God again, that he is the most intelligent designer. I'll be using the male as well, not because I'm saying that God is male or female or is an it. It's the common language that is used for, within the traditional religions. So God has this, he's the first designer of the car. And as I said, he's the master intelligent designer. And for his particular agenda, he wants the car to go straight. Why does he want to go straight? No reason. Just wants it to go straight. So he designs the car to go straight. How is he going to do this? What are his design options? And what I realized, he only has really two options. He can design a car, no steering wheel, axis where the wheels can't go left or right. It doesn't matter what human being, whether the human being has free will or not. You put the human being in there, the car can only go straight. And it goes straight forever, for infinity. God is happy, great design, he thought about it, engineered it, tweaked it, perfect. Second design, he could design a car because he's just feeling different. He's like, I want to design a car with a steering wheel. So he designs the car with a steering wheel, changes the axis so that you can go left or right, you can go off-roading, no problem. But creates the human being, no free will. Basically, the human being, when he's downloading information, will just do whatever God wants him or her to do. And so, put the human being in the car, it's got a steering wheel, but God says the human, go straight forever. The human's like, I will do that. Go straight forever. Done. Perfect design. He's happy. Car's going straight all the time. No disruption, no chaos, nothing can go wrong. Beautiful. Now, staying with this as a metaphor, it appears that, when we look at our present reality, that he actually designed the car with a steering wheel. It seems very clear on that, with an axis that can go left to right, where the car can go off-roading and go up mountains if it wants to, and design the human being with free will or free choice. Because obviously, as we look at the planet today, we've got human beings doing all kinds of things, all kinds of ideas and thoughts and creations, and moving the materials from the earth in all kinds of different directions. So it's quite clear that this notion that we don't have a choice is not true. Okay. But then it brings the question about the agenda. Because obviously, religious people, religious authorities, and all different types of religions, whether it's small, big, whether it's an indigenous or non-indigenous, there's an authority figure or authority entity that is dictating a behavior. Now, some are less than others in terms of the dogmatism, in terms of what you need to be doing, depending on this. Even within a religion, there's different varieties of it. But there's a general agenda for how to look at God. And if you don't, you're a sinner, you're less than, there's something wrong with you. Something's going to happen in a negative way when you die. And so there's all these negative stories sort of related to that. And my whole thing is, why would this intelligent designer, create us with this free will and then get angry at us when we exercise this will? And so I like to think there's a more empowering interpretation of our existence here. I know it's very bold of me just to come on here and just say that, but and again, I'm not the only one. But yeah, what if the whole design, the whole point of the design was that we have this free will and that, it's up to us to create whatever we want to create. And then he created this fabulous earth with all these different materials to rearrange them in all different forms and fashions, to create phones, to create cameras, to create planes, to create rocket ships, to cars, to boats, to all of it. And he did this and just basically stepped back and said, you go ahead and do it. Now, there was a caveat to all that, and that was, yes, you can make all your choices and decisions, but there will be consequences to whatever choices you make, and you will experience those consequences in a very deep and feeling way as a human being, which is why, we suffer. We feel pain because of the choices that we've made, or even the design, you could say, as well, of this existence. This is part of the whole process of it. And so, then it leads to the whole, perspective that if this is the point, that we are experiencing all these things, and again, even when you think about, like a nuclear bomb, put uranium in the earth. Didn't have to put uranium, but say, I'm going to put uranium just to see what will happen. Will they find the uranium? Probably as a design, I'm going to say that God knew at some point we're going to discover the name, because we're just that way. We're curious. We just got to keep digging here, go there. Oh, I want to go look over there. We all kind of like humanity's evolution. When you talk about ADHD, humanity as a whole, we're ADHD. The whole concept of being a human being is ADHD. We just can't sit still. We got to keep curious and curious. We even, as I said, take uranium, built a bomb, blew up, killed a bunch of millions of people, created radiation called sickness for years and decades onwards, and then we go, ooh, that was not a good creation. And then we spend our time trying not to make sure no one else drops a bomb again. And so this is just an extreme example of, here you go, do whatever you want, but here's the consequence. And so it sort of leads to the question, on our, as a society now, that if God stepped back and just said, hey, go ahead and do whatever you want, that we actually are empowered. This is a beautiful thing, that we actually have choice. That all of our choices, everyone out there on this planet, no matter what your circumstances are, and I'm of course aware that we all have different circumstances. We're all playing with different crayons. Some got more crayons and some have less crayons to do whatever we want to do on a daily basis. But we all have a choice at some point, either how we're going to perceive what's happening in our experience, or we can actually act and do different things to change the reality. And so that's really what I feel excited about. I'm very clear about, because I've also, as a human being, searched for these, what is the orange story, and being, had those influences that I'm doing less than, I'm not as good, there's something wrong with me. And so I am feeling empowered these days in terms of what I can do. And this is partly why, inspired me to do these videos. And so it sort of leaves, when we look at the religious sort of organizations, what is their future? If really their job is, interpreting what God wants, and there's agenda, and if there is no agenda, well, then what's the purpose of religion? And I don't want to throw the baby with the bathwater, because all religions, all organizations that bring people together is a beautiful thing. To have, doing charity works and supporting people within their community and giving a common story that connects people, because obviously we like to hang around people that have the same story as us. Because if you think about the planet, we've got all kinds of stories that people are following. Some you may think are stupid, some you think are great. And so we can't just throw that away. So how can religions evolve or move forward as we move forward as humanity, because of the influence they have, bringing forth that love that's within all religions, but bringing it in a more connected way, all religions sort of coming together, all the leaders, and really bringing forth. And again, that's going to be another discussion, another video, to sort of go into that in more depth. So I just want to leave it today, on a practical, because I always like to give a practical thing as part of these videos, is how can you take more accountability and responsibility for your actions so that you bring more empowerment, more power within yourself. And why I say that is, as a person, when I was in my 20s, I ran away from responsibility and accountability, because I had a story that when I looked at people that were taking accountability and responsibility, people that were in positions of authority, that were, whether it's government or religious or business or whatever it may be, sports, managers, leaders, those sort of things, that I looked at their lives and I go, yeah, they get praised, but they get shit on as well. People get angry at them, they point the finger at them and say you're no good, and it just seemed like a terrible thing to want to be responsible and accountable. That if I just ran away and just sort of ducked all that, I would avoid all that negativity, all that people pointing the finger at me. But then when I hit the age of 30 and I was like not feeling so great, I even had to move back home. I'm like, oh, the ways I'm doing there's got to be I'm misguided here in some sort of way. And so that's when I came to realize, to have power, to have empowerment, you need to be accountable for your actions. You need to, when you do something that you should have done better or should not even maybe have done in that moment, that you make retribution in some forth. You do take an action to somehow mitigate that or heal that if you can right away. And again, sometimes there might be things from 10 years ago, 20 years ago that you may have to look at. But just taking accountability and taking responsibility that you have the ability to respond in a more powerful, empowered way. And so that's really my share today about that. And again, as I said, this It's not about what God, agenda that God wants, but we as human beings need to empower ourselves. What do we want? What can we do? If we have all these materials on the earth and we can organize ourselves however, and there is no agenda, then ultimately it's up to us to choose. We have that choice to do so. And this is going to really dictate as we look to the future whether we're going to perish or whether we're going to thrive. And I want to thrive. I want to be part of that, thriving of humanity. And so these videos, again, is one way I do it. I do it in other ways, which I'll talk about in future videos. And again, I'm just one person of 8 billion. And there's this whole spread of this happening around the world and people doing different ways and really bringing forth love into the world. And so, yeah, love in action is really what it comes down to. And so in your life today, take accountability, take responsibility, bring more love into action. And so thank you again for watching these videos. I hope you're having a great day or night or evening, wherever you are on this planet. And thank you for joining, or I shouldn't say joining, but just watching this video. And if you're interested in more videos and you want to subscribe, there's the button down below. Just subscribe on that, and that will actually help to bring this more in terms of people finding these videos. So thank you, and have a